Would you or a loved one like to know more about how to plan for and handle mental health crisis situations? Have you heard about something called a Psychiatric Advance Directive and wondered if it might be something to learn more about to see if it could be a helpful tool in your recovery toolbox? My name is Betty Rowland. I'm a consultant with NAMI North Carolina and a member of NAMI for many years. The National Alliance on Mental Illness is a grassroots organization providing support, education, awareness, and advocacy so that all affected by mental illness can build better lives.
Hello, my name is Barjan Lee. I am a member of NAMI Charlotte. I'm a mental health advocate, a certified peer support specialist, and a woman with a mental health diagnosis.
On behalf of NAMI North Carolina, I'd like to thank our funder for this project, which is supported through block grant funding from the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration through the Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services, and part of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. Also, thanks to the collaborators who so generously shared materials and expert feedback in the preparation of this video: Dr. Marvin Schwartz, Duke Professor in Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, and B.B. Smith, Clinical Social Worker with Southern Regional AHAC and the North Carolina Evidence-Based Practices Center. Planning ahead is key whenever crises or challenging times arise. For example, your local television news channel will give you lots of information about approaching storms so that you can prepare for whatever they send your way. We'll all be prompted to take steps, often days in advance, to think through what we would do if the storm hit us directly. We're reminded to develop an evacuation plan, to stock up on bottled water, non-perishable food, batteries, very important, to charge our cell phones, to make sure that we have a supply of any needed medication, and lots of other practical considerations. In the same way, planning ahead for mental health or psychiatric crises can really help you to have more say in what happens if you should have that situation occur. No matter how you look at it, planning ahead for behavioral health crises is hard. It can be emotional and challenging and bring up feelings and memories that you might rather leave in the past. Many people find that designing and creating your own crisis plan can be an empowering act of self-advocacy. Taking the lead in your own treatment planning in this way can help you make sure that your preferences are clear and that your voice is heard, even if you're not able to speak for yourself during that time. In this presentation, you will hear how advanced planning for crises through the development of a Psychiatric Advance Directive, and we'll call that a PAD for short, can benefit a person who has lived experience with mental illness, as well as benefiting their loved ones and friends. We'll go over what a Psychiatric Advance Directive is and why you might want to create a PAD. We'll talk about some tips for having conversations about crisis planning with your treatment providers and with your loved ones and family members in your support system, and how you might communicate your treatment preferences and wishes to improve how things go for you in a crisis situation. Finally, we'll outline what's involved in creating a PAD and identify resources for further information. There's a lot of information here. Rather than feeling like you need to focus on making notes, you may find it useful to download the notes document that accompanies this video, which has the information and resources more easily available. So let's get started. What is a Psychiatric Advance Directive? It is a legal document that allows you to express your wishes and preferences for what you want to have happen if you're in a psychiatric crisis and not able to speak for yourself at that time, and also to give legal consent for or to decline specific future psychiatric treatment. This is called an advance instruction. You can also authorize someone else to make decisions about treatment on your behalf based on your stated preferences. If you're unable to communicate an informed choice at that time, this person's called a healthcare agent. The healthcare power of attorney process is the same for medical settings too. not just for mental health. Any person 18 years of age or older who is capable, the law says, of sound mind, can complete a PAD. The law in North Carolina is broad and gives you a lot of flexibility. You can create either an advance instruction document only, or you can name a healthcare agent only, or you can do both, depending on your specific situation and preferences.
Even though psychiatric advance directives have been around since the 1990s, they are not widely known about or understood. So why might one want to create a PAD? Well, there are a number of possible benefits for you. A psychiatric advance directive empowers you to plan ahead for crises before they happen, supports your recovery as you give clear instructions about your preferences for healthcare, encourages dialogue about care with your treatment providers and others in your support system. PADs offer you an opportunity to state preferences, not just for psychiatric treatment, but also for crisis planning for other practical life issues, such as the care of minor children, taking care of pets, specifying how you would choose to notify your employer about an unplanned absence, specifying plans for paying rent and other bills, and so forth. If you do go into a hospital or other crisis treatment service, a PAD enables you to receive the benefits of the treatments and medication that you have authorized in advance so that you may get back to yourself more quickly. If you give consent in advance through your PAD for admission to one or more specific hospitals, a PAD preserves the possibility of voluntary admission, which might avoid or minimize involuntary commitment.
So what might be the benefit for family members, loved ones and friends and medical providers if you were to complete a PAD? One, if you choose, you can give consent in advance for exchange of information to a specific loved one or other member of your support network. You can specify the type of information that you would consent to be shared, as well as specifying who you would and would not like to visit you. This can really help in a psychiatric crisis and give peace of mind for your loved ones or support network. This keeps them from running into the brick wall of no information, as medical providers are required to abide by medical confidentiality regulations. Sometimes people are concerned because they can't find you or wonder if you're missing or hurt, and would benefit just from the confirmation that you're safe. Sometimes loved ones or trusted friends might be able to share some history that might help your treatment provider help you. Two, many times PADs contain needed medical information in a concise format that can greatly assist medical providers to make admission decisions. This helps get your preferred requested treatment in place more quickly and assists with your recovery more quickly with medications and other treatments that you've already given your informed consent for in advance. And three, you can give consent for admission to specific hospitals in advance and consent for release of information to specified members of your support system in advance. This allows the specific hospital or crisis facility provider that you named to share information and consult and coordinate with your support system network, which might include family, friends, and outpatient treatment providers. So if PADs are so helpful and have all these benefits, why have relatively few people actually made them? The existence of PADs as a tool of recovery is not well known enough. The forms are long, legalistic, and a little overwhelming. Like other legal documents, PADs have requirements for witnesses for your signature and for having the form notarized. There's a fee at the North Carolina Secretary of State's office to register the PAD into the confidential online repository. Because PADs are not in widespread use, the doctor or psychologist who's making crisis admission treatment decisions may not know that you have a PAD, or they may not be aware of the various requirements to activate, deactivate, and use PADs during a crisis.
So far, this video has covered what a psychiatric advance directive is and what some of the benefits might be for an individual with lived experience with mental illness, as well as their support network of family, friends, and treatment providers. Now we turn to, what are the things to think about if I decide to take this further, and how do I start? The first step is to clarify for yourself what your preferences are about treatment in a crisis. You can think back on any experience you've had in a psychiatric or medical emergency room. What went well, or what would you want to be different in the future? You can gather notes on medications or other treatments that have helped you in the past, or things that may have not helped, or medications that have had side effects. You can think about any situation or feelings that might trigger a psychiatric crisis for you. Identify what helps you when you feel you are going into a crisis, or what makes things worse. Identify the practical things in your life that you would want to make sure are taken care of if you were unable to speak for yourself. Think about the various parts of your life that are important. If you have minor children, who would you want to take care of them? Who could call your boss at work if you needed to be out unexpectedly? How would you make sure the rent and other bills are paid so that you don't lose your housing? Who will care for your pet, water your houseplants, and so on and so on. Another important step is having a conversation with your treatment providers, your family or loved ones, and others that you trust. Because having these conversations is difficult, we all tend to put them off, but they can be very helpful in moving toward recovery. Here are some tips from communication experts about how to start a conversation about things that may be hard to talk about. Identify the person or persons in your life who are important and whose feedback you trust. Arrange a place to talk where you won't be interrupted. Speak directly, calmly, and matter-of-factly. Share something yourself, such as, I have been thinking about planning ahead and wonder if we can talk about. Try to keep the conversation focused on the topic at hand and not rehash the past. Many people find it helpful to reach out to a trusted treatment provider or trusted peers or others with lived experience for their perspective and feedback about options that have helped them in a crisis and their own experiences with PADS. The advanced directive forms themselves can be a little challenging, but some people use the paperwork itself as a conversation guide.
In previous sections of this video, you've heard about what a psychiatric advance directive is and some of the possible benefits to having one in a crisis. You've been challenged to clarify your own preferences and wishes for what you'd like to have happen in a crisis, and you've gotten some tips about how to bring up issues that may be sensitive or hard to talk about. Now you might say, okay, I'm ready to move forward and actually create a PAD and complete the process to make it a legal document. What's in one of these things? The advanced instruction form allows you to consent to or to decline various possible treatments. For example, hospital admission, medications, electroconvulsive treatment or ECT, and other treatments. We encourage people to be specific. For example, I consent to be admitted to hospital A or B, but not hospital C. I consent to take medication A, B, C, but not medication D or E. We encourage people to give the reasoning. For example, I consent to taking medications A, B, and C because I've taken them in the past and they've helped me sleep better and think more clearly. I do not consent to take medications D and E because when I took them, I slept too much, I gained weight, I had medical concerns, the medication was too costly, and so on. We encourage people to create a medication list. You might think that electronic medical records nowadays would make this irrelevant, but that is not the case. A concise list of medications with your own review of your experience of how they affect you is key to getting information to admitting mental health providers in such a way that it's actually used. The advanced instruction form includes sections on what triggers you have for a crisis, what helps you, what makes things worse for you in a crisis. There's also a place to write in your preferences and plans about all those other practical life plans that you would want to communicate. Now we turn our focus to the other part of the Psychiatric Advance Directive that you can choose to complete, about appointing a healthcare agent or healthcare power of attorney. You can name one or more trusted individuals to make healthcare decisions on your behalf, individuals that you trust to carry out your wishes and preferences. There are restrictions on who can serve in this role, mostly to prevent potential conflicts of interest. So your medical providers are not eligible, assisted living or family care home staff also is not eligible. PADs are activated when, in the opinion of a physician or eligible psychologist, the person currently lacks sufficient understanding or capacity to make and communicate mental health treatment decisions. PADs are activated when the physician makes a note to this effect in the medical record. At this point, the PAD is in effect, and the treating physician and other providers should then follow the guidance in the advance instruction and honor the person's wishes. PADs are deactivated when the person regains capacity to make and communicate about their treatment and can again be an active and informed part of their own treatment team. Do mental health providers always have to honor the instructions? Yes, although there are some exceptions. Providers may disregard instructions that are not consistent with generally accepted community practice standards, or when requested treatments are not feasible or available. For example, you've given consent for admission to one specific hospital, and that hospital has no available beds when you're seeking admission. Finally, instructions can be overridden by involuntary commitment. Involuntary commitment is a legal process which requires an individual be assessed, even against their will. Even if involuntary commitment could override some parts of the PAD, such as a preference about hospital choice, the rest of the PAD instructional directive remains in effect. Thank you for your interest in hearing more about Psychiatric Advance Directives. Want more information? Check out these links. Go to the National Resource Center for Psychiatric Advance Directives at nrc-pad.org. For getting the forms, click on the link for North Carolina. And they also have videos, personal stories, frequently asked questions, and more. Since PADs vary from state to state, you can also get information about other areas of the country. Check out the Crisis Navigation Project at crisisnavigationproject.org for many resources about PADs and information about PAD facilitation. And of course, the NAMI North Carolina webpage at naminc.org for information, downloadable handouts, the notes document that accompanies this video, and other resources for adults with mental illness. Remember, planning ahead for mental health crises is a gift that you give yourself and your loved ones. Consider if a Psychiatric Advance Directive would benefit you. Share your preferences and wishes with your treatment providers and loved ones.
You can take more control of your life, your own recovery, and your own treatment. Psychiatric Advance Directives can be an effective tool in meaningful recovery and bring you and your loved ones more peace of mind.